Was Dylann Roof mentally ill when he represented himself at his capital death penalty trial in 2017? Well, that is what his attorneys are now arguing in a 231-page legal brief filed late Tuesday. It claims Roof hid his mental illness from the court and is now seeking to have his convictions and his sentence vacated. Caroline Hecker joins us live in studio after scouring through those documents. And Caroline, the big question, how are they alleging that he hid his mental health?
Well, Sam, the appeal alleges Dylann Roof cooperated with his attorneys for nearly a year and a half leading up to his trial, but on day 3 of jury selection, they say he suddenly stopped. And they say that came after he learned that his attorneys were going to tell the jury he was suffering from schizophrenia spectrum disorder and displayed symptoms of autism. He wrote a letter to prosecutors insisting he was not mentally ill and opposed his attorney's plans to present, quote, mental health stuff to the jury. His attorneys say his delusions were an example of someone suffering from a psychotic disorder, saying in part, he firmly believes that there will be a white nationalist takeover of the United States within roughly 6, 7, or 8 years, and when that happens, he will be pardoned. After 2 competency evaluations, the court ruled he was competent to stand trial, despite trial lawyers citing evaluations from 5 different defense experts who supported a mental illness diagnosis. The court sided with a court-appointed psychiatrist's opinion, who said Roof was not delusional and instead his visions were, quote, overvalued racist views. Now, because Roof represented himself during the penalty phase of the trial, his appellate attorneys argue he did not present mitigating evidence, or known as extenuating circumstances, like a mental illness that would have given the jury additional information to make an informed decision. And when he did address the jury during that penalty phase, he told the jury he chose to self-represent to stop his attorneys from arguing that he was mentally ill. Live in the studio, Caroline Hecker, WYS News 10.
Caroline, thank you. The Department of Justice has until February 18th to respond to that appeal.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would have to apologize for, delete one of my previous videos about the Dylann Roof story, because the story, I didn't even, read the entire story correctly. So I apologize for that. And I also want to give a shout out to Lisa Cabrera and the Turian Rain for this story. Now, before I start this article, I want you guys to remember this evil monster, that was 21 years old, that killed 9 African-American church members in Charleston, South Carolina. Dylann Roof is a monster, okay? And then after that, and you remember, he left from the, for the Ebenezer AME Church, headed straight towards the highway, and then got stopped by a North Carolina state trooper. And then that's when he, got arrested. And then when he said he was hungry, the North Carolina state troopers took him to Burger King and bought him a hamburger. Before he was arraigned on charges of killing these 9 African-American church members. So I want you guys to remember this is the same monster. So I'm going to go ahead and read this article. It says it's come from Columbia, South Carolina, and this article comes from WIS News, which is the NBC affiliate. It says attorneys for white supremacist Dylann Roof argue he was mentally ill when he represented himself at his capital trial for the 2015 murders of 9 black parishioners at Mother Amiel AME Church in Charleston. In the 321-page brief filed late Tuesday with the 4th Circuit Court of Appeals, his attorneys argue his conviction and federal death sentence should be overturned. One of the biggest arguments presented in the appeals is Roof should not have been allowed to represent himself during the penalty phase of his capital trial. In doing so, his appellate attorneys argue he presented no mitigating evidence, also known as extenuating circumstances. As a result, his alleged mental illness was not disclosed to the jury, which they argue could have swayed the jury. I'm going to stop you right there. First of all, Dylann Roof made his choice of representing himself in this trial, you know. And now all of a sudden you got his lawyers, his attorneys is now saying that he's basically hiding his mental illness from the jury. Now, my thing is that they're using this mental illness card because they know they don't want this man to die in lethal injection in South Carolina. And they trying so hard to push this narrative so that, you know, they can say, well, he didn't know what he was doing when he shot and killed those 9 black African-American church members. But yet he know what the hell not only he know what the hell he was doing, but he even he was planning it in 6 months prior. He was doing it, he was make this plan 6 months before he start to doing this. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue reading this article. It says, one of the biggest arguments presented in the appeals is Roof should not have been allowed to represent himself during the penalty phase of his capital trial. Again, in doing so, appellate attorneys argue he presented no mitigating evidence, also known as extenuating circumstances. As a result, his alleged mental illness was not disclosed to the jury, while they argue could have swayed the jury. In the legal brief, appellate attorneys argue after cooperating for 16 months leading up to the trial, 3 days into jury selection, Roof became uncooperative with his trial lawyers. Shortly thereafter, he wrote a letter to prosecutors insisting he was not mentally ill and explaining his opposition to his counsel plan to present mental health stuff, particularly evidence that he was autistic, which he considered a fate worse than death. Roof was seen by several defense experts who said he showed symptoms of a psychotic disorder, including delusions, paranoia, and grandiose beliefs. He also showed signs of depression, anxiety, and autism, according to experts. One of his most prominent delusions, his counsel pointed out to the judge, was that African Americans was mounting a race war to extinguish the white population, and a media conspiracy was hiding it. They said, in part, he firmly believes that there will be a white nationalist takeover of the United States within roughly 6, 7, or 8 years, and when that happens, he will be pardoned. See, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna stop you right there again. He already told you that he's not mentally ill. He told them that I don't need to get mental illness card. I told you how I felt, and that's why I did what I did. He told the lawyers that, and the lawyers still thinking something's wrong with him mentally. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna tell you like this: Dylann Roof definitely deserved a death penalty. He deserved a needle. He literally said that he knows what he was doing, and he did it. He didn't say he want to do it. He said he had to do it. Have to. And obviously, his mind already make his plans that he want to attack an African American that day. He even said that he couldn't go to the black neighborhood because he'd get his butt kicked. But instead, he went to a softer target, which is an African American church, which is, of course, Ebenezer AME Church at the time. So let me go ahead and continue reading this article. It says, after two complicity evaluations, the judge ruled Roof was competent to stand trial. It sided with an opinion given by the court-appointed psychiatrist who evaluated Roof. He said Roof's visions were overvalued racist views, not delusions, because they were less bizarre and more logical than delusions, and because nothing else about him was psychotic. Excuse me. During the guilt phase of the capital trial, Roof offered no witnesses and the defense rests. After several weeks of testimony and 3 hours of deliberation, Roof was found guilty of all 33 counts. During the penalty phase, Roof, still representing himself, addressed the jury for the first time during opening opening statements, according to the appeal. He told them he chose to self-represent to stop counsel from arguing he was mentally ill, but admitted his choice accomplished nothing because the compensatory hearing record would eventually become public. He insisted to the jury he was not mentally ill, claiming there's nothing wrong with me except logic. So there you have it. And see, what the lawyers is trying to do, ladies and gentlemen, is trying to get him from even go to death row. So, and I mean, it happens all the time. And you know what? He had so many public defenders from California and Maryland to represent Dylann Roof. I'm not joking. So it proves that they really want him to not seek the death penalty, but instead get life without parole or get a lesser sentence because of his mental illness. And Dylann Roof, time and time again, told them that he don't want it. He's basically competent, and that's why he said that the judge decided that he is have evidence that he is competent to stand trial. So let's continue. It was during the penalty phase the government offered dozens of witnesses describing the pain and suffering Roof's actions had on them and their families. It was Roof's opportunity to provide mitigating evidence on his own behalf, such as a mental illness diagnosis, but he did not. He appellate attorneys argued in failing to disclose that information to the jury. It lacked all of the information necessary to make an informed decision, and Roof's right to due process were violated. The Department of Justice has until February 18th to respond to the appeal. Roof has currently housed at the federal penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana. And that's the end of the article. So, ladies and gentlemen, we already know what these lawyers are trying to do for Dylann Roof. They're trying to prevent him from getting the death penalty. That's why they want to appeal his sentence, telling them he's mentally ill, he doesn't know what he's doing. But it proves time and time again he does know what he's doing. He's really competent to stand trial. And again, we're gonna really wait and see what they're gonna do, how this story gonna play out. But it seems to me the lawyers are already high power public defenders are already trying to figure out how to get him out or try to appeal his death sentence to get a lesser charge. So, and again, if the role were reversed, ladies and gentlemen, if a 21-year-old African-American decided to shoot up a all-white church, killing 9 people, they don't even give them the public defenders. They're going to just go ahead and get him the death penalty, and that's it. And that's really it. They're not going to even give him, he suffered from mental illness. Whether he suffered from mental illness or not, they don't care. He's going to end up being in death row and give them the needle. So, but when it comes to Dylann Roof, however, he has suffered from mental illness, and even though Dylann Roof even told them that that's not the case, I'm competent, they still try to get him off. So tell me what you think about this, ladies and gentlemen. Likes, click, subscribe, and remember to click the notification bell for all the news and commentary. And with that being said, this is Lions Den signing off. Deuces.